You did not sleep well. Your wife had the kind of night that leaves a person shaken, crying out in her sleep, dreaming. She tells you at dawn that she held your murdered body in her arms. You laugh it off, mostly, but you did not sleep well either. And there was a man, weeks ago now, a stranger with a strange gift for reading omens, who stopped you in the street and told you, quite calmly, to be careful. He gave you a date. He told you to watch out for it. That date is today. You are the single most powerful human being on the face of the earth. Dictator for life, head of the state religion. The man whose name will rename a month of the calendar you yourself just redesigned. Rome does not have a king. Rome hates the very word. And yet here you are, closer to one than anyone in 500 years. This morning, an entire city is arranging itself around your day. And you are about to get up, get dressed, and go to work, same as always. Because that is the strange thing nobody tells you about absolute power. It does not buy you a day off. So here is the question worth asking about the most famous single day in Roman history. Forget what you already know about how it ends. Just for now, forget it. What was the morning actually like? What does a day look like when you are that powerful and that exposed? Because today, of all days, is the 15th of March, the Ides of March. You already know that phrase. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why. Let's start with the obvious myth. Absolute power sounds like absolute freedom. The top of the pyramid, nobody above you, do whatever you want, whenever you want. Here is the twist. It is closer to the opposite. The higher you climb in Rome, the less of your day belongs to you. A poor man's hours are boring, but they are his own. Yours are not. Every hour of your day, from the moment you open your eyes, is claimed by somebody else's need. That is not freedom. That is the single most demanding job that has ever existed, with no employer to quit and no one above you to appeal to. Hold on to that because it is the whole shape of the day you are about to live. One more piece of the illusion before we go further, because it explains why so many people around you are quietly furious. Somewhere in the pouches and strong boxes of this city, right now, coins are changing hands with your own face stamped on them. Yours, alive, that has never been done before, not once in the entire history of the Republic. Dead heroes, gods, ancestors. Sure, not a living man. You broke that rule too, and everyone noticed. Think about what that actually is. It is not vanity, or not only vanity. It is your face in every market stall, every soldier's pay packet, every dowry and debt in the city, whether people love you or not. You do not need to walk into a room for your presence to already be there. That is a kind of power no army can quite match, and also, to a certain kind of proud, traditional Roman watching his coin purse fill up with your profile on it, the single most alarming thing you could possibly have done. It looks, to them, exactly like something a king would do. You remember, maybe, what it was like decades ago to stand in someone else's doorway before dawn, waiting to be noticed by a richer man. We have told that story on this channel already. The ordinary Roman, the morning queue, the whole exhausting ritual of currying favor. Watch that video if you have not, because here is the twist for today. You are that doorway now. You are the man the entire city queues for. Before you have even finished dressing, your house is already full. Senators wanting favors, generals wanting commands. For in kings, actual kings, sending envoys to beg for your recognition, because a kingdom is not truly a kingdom unless you personally say so. Old friends wanting old friends' prices. Petitioners with legal cases, building contracts, grain shipments, 100 small disasters that only you, apparently, can fix. Every single one of them wants something, and every single one of them has practiced, on the walk over, exactly how to ask for it. You built the biggest doorway in the world. Now you live inside it. Blame it on Rome. And here is the part people never picture. How carefully guarded your own body actually is, and how little that guarding is really worth. Nothing goes into your mouth today that somebody else has not tasted first. Nothing. It is standard practice for a man in your position, and it tells you everything about the world you live in. The risk is assumed to be constant. Your mail is the same. Every letter that reaches you has already passed through other hands, read, checked, sometimes literally sealed by a scribe before it is sealed again for you. There is, in fact, a letter sitting in your hand or your toga fold right now, on this exact morning, warning you in plain writing about exactly what is being planned against you. You have not read it yet. You are holding a stack of other people's problems, and the one letter that matters most is buried somewhere in the pile, waiting. Let that sink in. You can command legions on 3 continents. You cannot make time this morning to open your own mail. Because the truth is, most of your power does not look like power at all. It looks like paperwork. You personally review legal disputes from provinces you will never visit. You personally approve building projects, road contracts, the founding of new colonies. You are, right now, mid-reform of the entire Roman calendar. We made a whole video about that mess. Go watch it because the old system had drifted so far out of sync with the actual sun that festivals were happening in the wrong season, and only you, apparently, had the authority to just fix it. So you did. You added days. You inserted an entire extra month. You personally reset the clock for the whole civilization because there was genuinely no one else positioned to do it. That is what absolute power actually spends its Tuesday doing, not feasts. Not conquest, scrolls, an endless, crushing avalanche of scrolls, each one demanding your personal attention because you built a system where only your attention counts. And underneath all of that paperwork, today, is the thing you are trying very hard not to think about. Your wife's dream is still sitting in your chest. So you send for the priests, and they check the omens the old-fashioned way, and the news is not good. Not good enough that you actually consider staying home. You send word today's Senate meeting might be postponed. Here is the second twist of the morning. A friend arrives. A trusted one, a familiar face, someone with every reason to be believed. And he talks you out of it, gently, reasonably, points out how it would look. The most powerful man in Rome, frightened off by a bad dream and a nervous priest. What would the Senate think? What would history think? So you get up. You get dressed properly, you decide to go anyway. Let that sink in, because it is the most human decision in this entire story. Not weakness, not carelessness. Just a man who has spent his whole life being seen, choosing, one more time, not to be seen as afraid. Now, your escort. You do not walk through Rome alone. You never have, not for years. You move with attendants called lictors, a formal honor guard carrying bundles of rods as a symbol of your authority, walking ahead of you, clearing your path, announcing that the most important man in the city is coming through. It looks and is meant to look like total protection. Here is the uncomfortable math nobody says out loud. Inside a sacred building like the Senate House, weapons are formally banned. Not just for the crowd, for everyone, including the men meant to protect you. Which means the safest room in Rome, by law, on paper, is a room where your own guards are required to leave their protection at the door. You have surrounded yourself with the appearance of total safety, walking straight into the one room where that appearance means the least. That is not a design flaw. Nobody planned it as a trap. It is simply what happens when a society builds elaborate rituals of trust around its most powerful man, instead of an actual answer to the one question those rituals cannot solve: who, exactly, do you trust completely? Here is a split that matters more than any of the scrolls. Out in the streets, among the ordinary people, the man in the rented room, the woman at the fountain, the crowd we have already spent a whole episode with, you are adored. You have given them games, grain, land, spectacle, a sense that somebody at the very top actually sees them. They would riot for you, some of them later, will. But you are not walking toward that crowd this morning. You are walking toward a room full of a much smaller, much richer, Much older kind of Roman, men whose families have run this city for centuries, who built their entire identity around the idea that no single man should ever stand above the rest of them. And you do, visibly, permanently, coin stamped, calendar renamed, above the rest of them. The people cheering in the streets are not in that room. The people who feel replaced by you are the only ones in that room. Blame it on Rome. And that question is the real weight of your mourning, heavier than any scroll. Because here is what nobody warns you about. On the way up, the higher you climb, the harder it becomes to tell a friend from a useful acquaintance. Everyone around you has a reason to be near you. Some of them genuinely like you, some of them need you. A few of them, and you cannot always tell which few, resent you in a way they have gotten very good at hiding because you hold something they believe should have been theirs. You have granted mercy to former enemies, publicly, generously, men who fought against you and were forgiven and folded back into public life. You did it because it was the right thing, and the smart thing, and it earned you a reputation for greatness of spirit. Here is the twist nobody wants to say out loud. Some of the men closest to you in that Senate chamber today are men you personally spared. Gratitude and resentment can live in the exact same chest. You cannot always tell from the outside which one is winning. If you have ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, a business partner, a close friend, someone who knew exactly where you were soft, you already understand this feeling better than you think. Now imagine that ache is not personal, it is structural. It is simply what your entire life has become. Blame it on Rome. Now, fair question. You might say all of this sounds exhausting. But you are still the most powerful man who has ever lived. Surely that is worth something. Surely all of this, the food tasters, the sealed letters, the endless scrolls, the friends you cannot fully trust, is simply the price, and a reasonable one, for standing exactly where you stand. And you would not be wrong. That is the honest, complicated answer, and we should not pretend otherwise. You built roads, calendars, legal reforms, and a version of Rome that will outlast every single person breathing today, including you. Power like that is not nothing. It moved the entire world. But notice what the price actually was. Not money, not comfort. It was privacy and trust, the two things an ordinary Roman, the man in the rented room with no water, the man we told you about in his own episode, had in a way you no longer do. He was never alone, and neither are you. The difference is, his crowd wanted his company, yours wants your signature. So you finish dressing, you step outside, into a city already fully assembled around you. The queue, the lictors, the scrolls tucked under an aide's arm, the letters still unread. Someone stops you on the street, on the way, and tries, one more time, to warn you plainly, you are polite, you do not stop walking. There is simply too much day left to do, and too much reputation riding on not flinching at a piece of paper. This is the part of the story that should sit with you, uncomfortably, longer than any of the scrolls or the omens. Not that you were warned. You were warned constantly. That was simply what being you sounded like every single day, from priests, from wives, from strangers in the street. The uncomfortable part is that a life built entirely on being watched leave, no room to simply disappear for a day, to just not show up, to protect yourself the one plain way an ordinary person could. Your power had made you the single most visible person in the world. And the single most visible person in the world cannot hide. But here is where I want to leave you, because this story does not actually end where you think it ends, not for our purposes today, and in a much stranger sense, not really at all. Walk with me back through this one morning, the calendar you personally rebuilt, out of sync stars pulled back into order. You are, this instant, living inside a version of it. The month that will carry your family name forward, long after every person in this story has been dust for 2,000 years. You have almost certainly said it out loud this year without thinking twice. The phrase your own soothsayer used, the one that named today? People still say it, half as a joke, whenever something ominous is coming. Beware the Ides of March, and the exact words a betrayed friend supposedly said in that room to the very last person he expected to see a blade from. They became the single most famous shorthand in the English language for the specific, gutting shock of being hurt by someone close. You have said some version of it, everyone has. Here is the strange, quiet comfort in all of it. You spend one impossibly full, impossibly guarded, impossibly lonely day surrounded by more people than almost anyone in history, and somehow still alone with the one truth none of them could fix for you. And 2,000 years later, we are not just talking about how that day ended. We are still, without noticing, living inside pieces of the life that came before it, your calendar on our walls, your month in our mouths, your warning still whispered every March. Power did not make you safe, but it made you permanent, in a way none of us fully control and all of us, quietly, hope for. So back to that morning, the bad dream you laughed off. The warning you had already been given weeks earlier with a date attached. The doorway full of people who all wanted something. The untasted food, the unread letter, the friend who talked you out of staying home. The guards who could walk you to the one room where their protection legally stopped at the door. And a choice, made quietly, to simply not be seen as afraid. You finish crossing the last stretch of street. Ahead of you, the meeting hall where the Senate is already gathering, doors open, waiting. What happens in that room in the next few minutes is the most written about, most performed, most quoted event in the whole of Roman history. A story for a different video, on a different day, if you ever want it. This one stops here, at the threshold, on purpose. Because today was never really about that room. It was about everything that led you to it. A life so powerful it left you nowhere private to stand. And every time you hear someone say it is lonely at the top, every time a warning gets brushed aside because canceling would look weak, every time a friend turns out to be the one person you never suspected, every time you check a calendar without a second thought, or say beware the Ides of March half-joking to someone about to have a very bad day, that is this morning, still running, 2,000 years later. You inherited more of it than you ever knew. So the next time absolute power looks like the answer to all your problems, you know exactly who to blame. Blame it on Rome.